All right, well, welcome to another fun-filled episode of Why I Don't Want to Listen to My Teacher in Class. And this is the second attempt of me trying to do that, as I completely failed to do it properly the first time and accidentally erased my recording. Yay! So, here we are. I have been accused of not following the PowerPoint that is on Blackboard, so here you are. This is what it is, but I'm actually going to use a different one. Why a different one, you ask? Because this one has such a pretty background. All right, so now on to the pretty background. Okay, so the Electoral College. I have a video on Blackboard that explains it, actually a couple, but the point is that there are a total of 538 electoral votes. Remember that we don't elect the president directly. The states get to choose, basically people vote in their states. Whoever wins that state for the most part then the state gets those electoral votes. There's a total of 538, and you need 270 to win because half of 538 is 269. And so you need a majority, which is 270. The votes come because you have 100 senators, you have 435 representatives, and according to the 23rd Amendment, D.C. gets 3 votes. So as a result, that comes down to 538. The Electoral College really hasn't necessarily worked all that well in all of our elections, and we'll kind of look at a few where it didn't. Quickly, Article 2, Section 1, Clause 3. This is where the Electoral College, this is the original Constitution. This has been changed, and we'll show you why. And by we, I don't know who. The royal we, apparently I made myself king. So, electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for 2 persons. This is the problem. It was 2 persons, and it's a problem because this was the issue in the election of 1800. And it says the person having the greatest number of votes shall be the president, if such a number be a majority. And here was the problem, that in the election of 1800, you can clearly see that it was Adams versus Jefferson, right there. And it is very clear that Adams and Jefferson won. The whole problem was that you were supposed to vote twice, once for the president and once for the vice president. As a result, all the Democratic Republican electors in these green states here, they cast 1 vote for Jefferson and 1 vote for our good friend Aaron Burr. As a result of the election was tied between Jefferson and Burr. So it went to the House of Representatives. That is what happens in the case of ties. It goes to the House of Representatives, and each state gets 1 vote. So even if, like, you're California today and you have 55 electoral votes, California only gets 1 vote. Okay, so what ends up happening is that in the Electoral College, Jefferson and Burr keep on tying up until the point where Hamilton convinces Hamilton gets involved and gets some people to throw their vote away from Burr, and as a result, Jefferson becomes president. Burr gets pissed because he thought he could sneak his way into the presidency, and he and Hamilton have a duel, and he kills Hamilton. But the real point is to show the weakness of the Electoral College situation. And while there are still weaknesses here today, it was worse then. And we can kind of see how they fixed it in the 12th Amendment. The electors shall meet in their respective states, which means they don't go to D.C., they just meet in their own state, and vote by ballot for president and vice president, one of whom at least shall not be inhabitant of the same state with themselves. They shall name in their ballots the person voted for as president, and in distinct ballots the person voted for as vice president, meaning that they shouldn't have this issue again. And that is what the 12th Amendment is about. It is fixing the problem of the election of 1800. So not a big, necessarily the worst thing that could have happened, but it was the end of Hamilton. All right. So that's what the 12th Amendment is. It fixes the Electoral College from that problem, but there are still other Electoral College problems. The election of 1824 is another example. Essentially, 4 people ran for office that year. Those 4 people were John Quincy Adams, Andrew Jackson, Henry Clay, and William Crawford. As you can see by the electoral map over here, it was a very divided election. But what ended up happening is that because Andrew Jackson won the most votes popularly, he also won the most electoral votes. But winning the most votes isn't good enough. You have to win a majority. A majority is 1 more than 50%. He instead won a plurality, which was the most electoral votes, but he did not reach 51% or 50.1%. So what ends up happening is the election goes to the House of Representatives, and they take the candidates with the highest vote totals. So that was Jackson, Quincy Adams, and William Crawford. Henry Clay was kind of didn't really count. He was not considered, but he was the Speaker of the House. And so what he did was he threw his support and got the state. Remember, each state has one vote, and he was influential. So he made a deal with Quincy Adams that if he would throw his support for Quincy Adams, he would become the Secretary of State. This was called the corrupt bargain, and it pissed off Andrew Jackson because Quincy Adams becomes president. It's a big deal in the time period because people felt like Jackson had the election stolen from him. Most of all Jackson, who was furious and basically started campaigning for the presidency in 1828, the day after this was decided. But again, we see the person who wins the most votes doesn't become president. So this is kind of a flaw in the system. The election of 1876. Here we have a different problem. We have basically the candidate who won the most, the popular vote. As you can see, the Republican is Rutherford B. Hayes, and the Democrat is Samuel Tilden. And what it comes down to is that this was at the very end of Reconstruction. The South was very frustrated with the North because of Reconstruction. They felt it was unfair. And as a result, the South voted for Tilden. And South Carolina, Florida, and Louisiana were in dispute. Both parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, claimed that they had won those states. So as a result of these, it was unclear who was the president. It went to the House of Representatives, and the House of Representatives was controlled by the Republicans, so that helped. But it also was an informal deal was made that they allowed Rutherford B. Hayes to be named president on the condition that they would end Reconstruction. And that is essentially what happened. Rutherford B. Hayes became known as Rutherfraud, and you have this scenario playing out again where the person who got the most popular votes, as you can see here, Tilden won the most popular votes, does not become president, and it's possible Tilden actually won the Electoral College, but that was in dispute. All right, on to the next election, which is the same scenario again. You have Grover Cleveland versus Benjamin Harrison. Grover Cleveland was our 22nd president, and he ran for another term in 1888. Benjamin Harrison was the Republican candidate, and he lost the popular vote, as you can see here. But he won the electoral vote. And because of that, he becomes president. Obviously, this is an incredibly close election with 5.4 million versus 5.5 million. Either way, again, this shows the flaws in the Electoral College. The popular vote doesn't win. Grover Cleveland does become president in the next term. Okay. And finally, then, we have, once again, this scenario in the election of 2000. The election of 2000 is more like the election of 1876, where there was disputes. So again, here's what the final vote tally was. The big issue was the state of Florida. Who had won it? It was actually called early in the night for Gore. They went back, and this time it did not go to the House of Representatives. Constitutionally, it's required to do that, but instead what ended up happening was that Vice President Gore sued, basically he sued, and so the case went to the Supreme Court because they wanted a recount of the Florida ballot. And this became a huge deal on national TV. You had essentially the electoral officials looking at these ballots, and they're trying to decide what counted as a vote. A vote should count if it's punched all the way through. We have electronic voting now, so this is not as much of an issue, but it was supposed to count in that scenario. These were called hanging chads. A chad is this stupid rectangular perforated thing. And essentially these hanging chads, should they count as votes? Should they not? Who knows? And this is called a dimpled chad. It looks like maybe they intended to vote that way, but they didn't punch it through. And so they spent hours and days looking at these votes, deciding whether or not these counted or not. The end result was that Bush became president. And this time it didn't go to the House of Representatives, but so we've seen that there are a number of times when the Electoral College has not clearly solved our electoral problems. Anyway, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me questions, as always, and I'd say I'll see you next time, but I never see any of you, except when you're in class. Have a great day.